I want to show you today how to do the Kitchener stitch the way that I like to teach it, which is really something that I've developed over many years of teaching this. And I think it's one of the more complicated techniques in knitting. And I think there's a way of learning and doing it that does simplify it and reduces the level of error that can happen. So a couple of the things that you're going to need. So obviously you're going to need your swatches that you are, or your pieces that you are Kitchenering. So it can often be the tip of a sock or a variety of other things that instructions might have you doing Kitchener stitch for. So it is basically a way of seaming two pieces of fabric together to make them look completely seamless. So we sell a product which we have developed, which kind of talks you through exactly what I'm going to show you today, which is a ruler, and it's called the Kitchener ruler. So it has the instructions written on the way that accompanies the way that I'm going to show you today. So the first thing, you'll also need a tapestry needle and a pair of scissors. So if you have not yet cut your yarn the length that you would want it to be for the Kitchener stitch, you're going to want to do that. And typically instructions will tell you the amount of yarn to do that. And so I'm going to show you here today. Typically you would want about 3 to 4 times the length of the row of stitches that you are going to be Kitchenering together. So this is 3, and I'll just do one more, so that'll give us about 4. So I'm going to cut that. You don't want it too long, because then the yarn starts to really get in your way. So we're going to cut that yarn, and we're going to thread the needle. And you want always, when you are Kitchenering, to have the two wrong sides together. So your right sides, like if you flip up on the back stitches and flip the front stitches so that they are parallel with the table, they should look like when you're going to put them together, they should come together at that top of the needle. So we're placing those wrong sides together. So one of the right sides will be facing you. In this case, the working yarn is coming off of the back needle, and we're going to start with the beginning of the Kitchener, which is the setup. It's the purl on the front needle and knit on the back needle. So when we use the terms purl and knit in the Kitchener instructions, we aren't actually purling the stitches or knitting the stitches. It's actually just referring to the direction that the needle will enter the stitches. So if it's purl, the needle will enter from the right pointing to the left side. If it's knit, it's going to enter the stitch from the left-hand side of the stitch toward the right side of the room. So when we do this first part here, we're going to purl on the front, which just simply means to pull the tapestry needle through in a purlwise direction, and then you can pull that through. And then on the back, we're going to knit on. So we're going to place the needle into the stitch as if we were knitting, and then we can pull through. One of the more difficult parts of this is actually the tensioning. So you want to make sure that your tension is even and not too tight. If you make it too tight, it will actually create a seam, which is not what we want. We want it to look like it's seamless. So you have to really balance your tension to not be too tight. And I always tell people, when you are Kitchenering, it's always going to be better to be too loose than it is to be too tight. Because if you're too loose, you can pull the excess across the row towards where you end. If you are too tight, you have to guess kind of how much excess you need to pull back to the beginning. So always better to be loose in Kitchener than it is to be too tight. So the next thing is the 2 different instructions that we have. So we have 2 different instructions here. That's front needle and back needle. So what I want you to do is make sure that when you are doing either needle, when you're working on just the front or just the back, I want you to make sure that you don't pull the yarn through until you've done both of the actions. So the action on the front needle is going to be to knit off and then purl on, and then you'll pull the yarn through. So don't pull the yarn through until you're done doing both of these things. So we're going to knit off and purl on, and then pull our yarn through. The reason for this is that if you do it this way and you lose track of where you are, simply looking at where the working yarn is will tell you what you've done. So if your working yarn is coming from the front needle, you know that you've done both of those things. On the back needle, we're going to purl off, and we're going to knit on, and then we're going to pull through. And again, if we look at what we've done here, we can see that the working yarn is coming from the back needle. We know that we've we've done the back needle, we're now on the front needle. So if something happens to distract you or you get lost in the patterning at any point, just seeing where the yarn is, instead of breaking these into 4 different parts, by breaking them into 2 parts, that will alleviate any issue you might have from losing your place. So we're on the front needle, we're going to knit off and purl on, pull through. And you might have, in the very beginning, you're going to have that working yarn kind of getting caught up on the edge there. You just need to gently pull that around the stitches and make sure that it's not getting caught up. On the back needle, we're going to purl off and knit on, and then we'll pull through. And again, if we're a little bit loose, that's okay. We can tighten this as we go, and we can tighten it when we get to the end if we need to. But you want the stitches to look consistent with the tension of the other stitches. So the Kitchener is actually mimicking the look of an actual piece of yarn as it moves across the row. So where are we? We've done our back stitches, so we know we're back onto the front. So we're going to knit off, purl on, and pull through. And on the back, we're going to purl off, knit on, and pull through. Knit off, purl on, pull through. We can see we're coming from the front, so we've done the front. This will help you as you go across. You can continue to reference that. We're going to purl off, knit on, and pull through. Back to the front, knit off, purl on, pull through. This is something that definitely takes practice, and the more you do it, the better you will be and the more comfortable you will become with it. So it is something that I do recommend doing this as a practice. So, you know, create some swatches and do practices on something that actually isn't a project, so that when you are needing to do it, and especially if you're not doing it super frequently, then you will actually have the practice in, and you'll be more comfortable when you actually go to do it. So purl off, knit on, and pull through. And now you can really start to see how that's looking and how that's meant to be. So again, if you need to put this down, if the phone rings or somebody's at the door or you just lose your place, you know where you are because your yarn will just be coming from that needle. So this is coming from the back needle, meaning that we've done the back and we are onto the front. So we're going to knit off and purl on. And you'll continue to do this until you get to the end, and that's when you can pull your yarn and tighten as you go across. And that is the Kitchener stitch.